Guten Tag, Klasse. Heute machen wir Hypothesen. Und für Hypothesen musst du Konjunktiv benutzen. Good day, class. Today we are making hypotheses. And to make hypotheses, we have to use the subjunctive tense. The subjunctive tense is what we reviewed yesterday, where we were using verbs like hätte, wäre, würde, könnte, dürfte. Well, creating hypotheses is much the same. People often make hypotheses about how things might or could be. In English, we often use an if-then statement to make a hypothesis. In German, wenn and dann statements express the same idea, although dann is often omitted. This is something that we usually say in English, but the Germans might just leave out. So when hypothesizing, you might say, for example, wenn du in einem fremden Land wärst, if you were in a foreign country, dann würdest du schon mit den anderen mitmachen. Then you would get along or participate with the others. Or, wenn sie Schwierigkeiten mit der Sprache hätte, if she had difficulties with the language, dann würde sie sich isoliert fühlen. Then she would feel isolated. The dann is optional. You do not need to write it. The Germans do not always include it. So, what do you notice about the word order and punctuation in these statements? Well, you should notice that there's a comma in between, and the verbs are on either side. These are using wenn as the sentence starters, which mean if. If you remember, I taught you two ways to use the subjunctive tense. One, using wenn, and then the verb is at the end. You can choose to have the verb first if you would like. They are both equally correct. For example, you could say, wärst du in einem fremden Land, dann würdest du, and continue the sentence. You can choose to have the verb first. Same thing for the second one. Wenn sie Schwierigkeiten mit der Sprache hätte, you can choose to have the verb first. Hätte sie Schwierigkeiten mit der Sprache, dann würde sie sich isoliert fühlen. It's up to you. Whichever one you make sense is fine. Whichever one makes sense to you is a-okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to complete these sentences with forms of hätte, wäre, and würde. It says, verbinde dann die Sätze und pass auf die Wortstellung auf. So we're going to complete these sentences with forms of hätte, wäre, and würde, and then on the next page, we're going to combine the two and put the word order in the proper format. So right now, they're in just your basic average sentence order: subject, verb, direct object, or an indirect object before the direct object. So let's take a look at the first set. These all have wenn as the sentence starter. That means that we need a form of hätte, wäre, and würde at the end. So let's see which ones make sense. Wenn meine junge Schwester jetzt erwachsen blank. If my younger sister were grown up now. So we want to say were. So that's going to be wäre. Wenn wir Krach mit unseren Eltern. If you remember Krach, that was an argument. So if we had an argument with our parents. So the form of had is hätte. Wenn mein Kumpel blank. If he blank my buddy. So if he had my buddy, if he would my buddy, or if he were my buddy. The were is the one that makes sense. If he were my buddy, wenn mein Kumpel wäre. Wenn ich eine schlechte Note in Mathe blank. So if I blank a bad grade in math. Well, you can't be one, and you can't would one. So if you had a bad grade in math, hätte. Let's look at the second box. Blank wir ruhig darüber reden. So wir blank ruhig darüber reden. We would calmly talk about it. So würden, wir würden. The next one, we blank zum Fußballspiel gehen. Well, probably würden again. We would go to the soccer game. Mein Lehrer blank schimpfen. My teacher had scold, were scold. Would again is one that makes sense. Mein Lehrer würde schimpfen. And sie blank auch Auto fahren dürfen. So she would also be allowed to drive. She were also allowed to drive. She had also allowed to drive. Würde is the one that makes sense again as well. So now we have two clauses, and we're going to combine them together. We're going to find the sentences that make sense to combine. So you're going to probably have to flip back and forth between your pages a little bit. We're going to start with the first one. Wenn meine junge Schwester jetzt erwachsen wäre. So we're going to write that down on the next page here. So it says, verbinde hier die Sätze und pass auf die Wortstellung auf. Combine the sentences and watch out for the word order. So we're going to start with the first one. Wenn meine junge Schwester jetzt erwachsen and then we're going to add the optional dann, then. So we want to think about which one of the clauses would logically combine. So wenn meine junge Schwester jetzt erwachsen wäre, if my younger sister were grown up now, then, probably she would be allowed to also drive. So that's the last one. Sie würde auch Auto fahren dürfen. So remember, when you're using these hypothesizing clauses, you want to make sure that your verbs are before and after the comma. So we're going to put würde, and then the rest of the sentence is going to follow. So würde sie auch Auto fahren dürfen. So remember that dann is optional, so then she would also be allowed to drive, or she would also be allowed to drive. They are both correct. So let's look at the next one. Wenn wir Krach mit unseren Eltern hätten, let's see, wenn wir Krach mit unseren Eltern hätten, if we had an argument with our parents, dann, optional. Let's see, our options are wir würden ruhig darüber reden, we would calmly talk about it. Wir würden zum Fußballspiel gehen, we would go to the soccer game. And mein Lehrer würde schimpfen, my teacher would scold me. So probably the logical one is we would calmly talk about it. So remember, the verbs have to be on both sides of the comma. So we're going to add the verb next, würden, and then the rest of the sentence follows. Wir ruhig darüber reden. We would calmly talk about it. So let's take the next sentence. Wenn mein Kumpel wäre, wenn mein Kumpel wäre, if he were my buddy, dann, and I'll put parentheses again since it's optional. You can choose if you want it or not. We have two options left. Wir würden zum Fußballspiel gehen, we would go to the soccer game, or mein Lehrer würde schimpfen. Well, if he were my buddy, we would go to the soccer game. That's the logical one that makes sense. So verb has to be on either side of the comma. So würden, and the rest of the sentence follows. Wir zum Fußballspiel gehen. If he were my buddy, then we would go to the soccer game. And the last one, wenn ich eine schlechte Note in Mathe hätte. Wenn ich eine schlechte Note in Mathe hätte. So if I had a bad grade in math, well, we only have one left, and it's the one that makes sense. Mein Lehrer würde schimpfen. So my teacher would scold me. So dann, optional. Würde mein Lehrer schimpfen. So for those of you who prefer not to use wenn first in the sentence and you prefer to have the verb first, these sentences won't change all that much. So for example, the first one, wenn meine junge Schwester jetzt erwachsen wäre, you would just have to have the verb first. Wäre meine junge Schwester jetzt erwachsen, dann würde sie auch Auto fahren dürfen. The second one, putting the verb first, hätten wir Krach mit unseren Eltern, dann würden wir ruhig darüber reden. The third one, putting the verb first, wäre mein Kumpel, dann würden wir zum Fußballspiel gehen. Fourth one, putting the verb first, hätte ich eine schlechte Note in Mathe, dann würde mein Lehrer schimpfen. So what I'd like for you to do once I'm done explaining, I would like for you to pause the video and work on 1 through 6 on your own. So what you need to do in 1 through 6 is complete the sentence. It says, vervollständig diese Sätze mit einer Hypothese. Here it is. So I gave you 1 through 6 hypothetical situations, and your job is to say what you would do in these situations. For example, we'll do number 1 together. Wenn ich Angst vor Höhen hatte, if I had a fear, so hätte, if I had a fear of heights, Höhen, well, dann würde ich, let's see, what would I do? I would probably not go rock climbing. So dann würde ich Felsen klettern nicht machen. That's something I just would not do if I was afraid of heights. So I used that hypothetical dann, and then I put the verb next, würde. So then I would not do rock climbing. So please work on 1 through 6 on your own and unpause the video when you want to check your answers. So if you have now unpaused, let's put down some potential answers that you could have written. Wenn ich lieber in München wäre, so if I were rather in Munich, dann würde ich nach München reisen. Then I would travel to Munich. Why wouldn't I do that? So your answer might be different than mine, but as long as you're putting done, of course this is optional, but you must make sure that you have the verb next. Würde ich nach München reisen? So let's take a look at number 3. Wenn ich lieber eine Brezel essen würde, if I would rather eat a pretzel, dann würde ich eine Brezel essen. Wenn ich nicht für eine Prüfung gelernt hätte, if I had not studied for a test, dann würde ich eine schlechte Note bekommen. Then I would get a bad grade. Wenn ich ein Ausländer wäre, if I were a foreigner, so I'm pretending I'm in Germany here, dann würde ich Deutsch lernen. Then I would learn German. Wenn du in einer Randgruppe wärst, that should be Gruppe with 2 P's. So if you were in a fringe group, dann würdest du wenige Freunde haben. Then you would have few friends. So perhaps a fringe group, but you could always be in a good, nice, good, big one. Who knows? So just different options of what your answers could be. So the directions here say, schreib Antworten zu diese Fragen mit Hypothesen. Write answers to these questions with hypotheses. So we'll do one together, and then I'm going to ask you to pause again and try to do 2 through 5 and come back and check your answers. So number 1, wie würdest du dich in Deutschland fühlen? How would you feel in Germany? So I want to have the full hypothesis written down. Wenn ich in Deutschland wäre, so if I were in Germany, dann würde ich, then I would probably be pretty happy to be there. It's a pretty great place. So dann würde ich mich glücklich fühlen. So fühlen is one of those reflexive verbs. So hence why I wrote the mich. So then I would feel happy. Dann würde ich mich glücklich fühlen. So I'd like for you to pause and then come back and check your answers. So if you have now unpaused and you have answered 2 through 5, let's see how you did. So obviously all of our answers will be different, but you can make sure that you're writing them in the proper sentence structure. So number 2, bekommst du eine gute Note auf die Deutschprüfung? Are you getting a good grade on the German test? Well, wenn ich eine gute Note bekommen würde, so I just wrote if I would get a good grade, dann wäre ich sehr glücklich. Then I would be very happy. So remember, wäre is both were and a combination of würde and sein, so I would be. Number 3, wenn du reich wärst, was würdest du tun? If you were rich, what would you do? So let's see. Wenn ich reich wäre, if I were rich, dann würde ich, I think, vielen Menschen helfen. I would help many people. Wenn du ein Lamborghini kaufen könntest, würdest du es kaufen? If you could buy a Lamborghini, would you buy it? Well, let's see. Wenn ich I'm going to shorten Lamborghini here just with an L. Wenn ich ein Lamborghini kaufen könnte, if I could buy a Lamborghini, dann würde ich ein Lamborghini nicht kaufen. And you can always add a reason too. You can add like a weil clause. So maybe like weil es nicht praktisch ist, because it's not practical. Who knows what your reason might be. And then the last one, würdest du mit Justin Bieber ins Kino gehen? Would you go to the movies with Justin Bieber? Well, let's see. Wenn ich mit Justin Bieber, I'll shorten his name here to JB, ins Kino gehen könnte, well, dann würde ich nicht gehen, then I would not go. And you can do a weil clause here again if you want to, but maybe like weil ich ihn nicht mag, because I don't like him. That's my opinion. So take a look at your answers. Make sure that your word order is the same, that you're putting verbs on either side of the comma. You might have written the dann if you wanted to expressly say then, but as I said before, that's not a requirement for hypothetical phrases in German. So now you know how to make hypotheses. Once you're all done and you've written everything out, you feel confident, take the practice assessment that is below this on Blackboard. Danke. Tschüss.